Good evening and welcome to Stage 501, Episode 31. And this is going to be about the global pandemic. It needs no particular introduction, but we'll still go through, obviously, the introductions of the guests we have with us here today. So, obviously, introducing myself, the host, I bring people together and people begin talking. I am an adherent of the third worldism tendency, and I support international development in general. So you can obviously check my profile on my Twitter account for my full bio. And I'll just move on by asking Chris to introduce himself first.
Hi, I'm Chris. I'm just a pasteurized Elizabeth Blackwellian, Jon Snowist, Florence Nightingalean, Edward Jennerite, who idolizes Jonas Salk and Shi Zhen Li.
Beautiful.
Sounds like a long list of doctors. Sounds like
Yes,
a very
it
long
is.
list of
No,
doctors.
it's not a doctor.
But okay, so I'll ask Chicago to introduce himself as well.
Hi, I'm Chicago Liberal. I'm a classical liberal. That's all.
Well said. Okay. McClure, can you introduce yourself next?
Good evening, everyone. I'm your basic classical liberal, and that's about it.
Okay. And can I also have Will introduce himself next?
Hey, my name's Will. I draw things, and I'm a Dudist priest who can see color, and I'm probably like a social democrat.
Okay.
Damn.
Good to have you here as usual. And also the politicrat.
I am a techno-primitivist.
What, really?
No, I'm not. No. I would say I am to the I'm somewhere to the left of Chicago and to the right of Chris. So
Hail the Messiah.
Yeah.
I'll call
Sounds
myself
very- Sounds very perfect center that you've got
a
going
basic
on there.
bitch.
A basic bitch. That is a
national
amazing
liberal,
political-
maybe national liberal.
Okay.
That's what I call myself.
Yeah, so we have a pretty balanced panel going on here then as a consequence of the way it's been arranged. So that's actually very good. Right, so with introductions out of the way, let me just check and see what what the first thing we were going to say was. Oh yeah, we're going to ask like around the panel, like, is this a black swan event in your view, the pandemic which we're currently sadly experiencing? Do you guys view it that way?
Donald
What's
Trump
a Black
it is.
Swan event?
Yeah, by black swan event, it means something which no one has ever seen before and was completely unpredictable. Do you guys think it was unpredictable?
You know
No.
what was really unpredictable?
Yes.
No, it
Being
was completely
skipped for my
predictable, but
introduction.
Will eventually.
Oh, well, you should have mentioned that I had actually not mentioned. Okay, Hara, you need to introduce yourself as well.
Am I not important to you people? Oh, don't sigh. I'm just kidding. Okay. I'll just be quick and I'll let you get on with it. I'm Hara. I'm a bitch. You know, I'm the female mansplainer of Twitter. I'm an anarchist communist, aka a socialist libertarian. I love fourth wave intersectional feminism, the LGBTQIA2+, and mental health and
Okay.
psychology.
Thank you for that introduction. So, obviously, that was a mistake when I skipped over you there. I don't know how that happened.
You just hate me. It's okay.
No, it's just that usually I would actually introduce you first. Somehow that didn't happen this time. But, right, so we were asking, is this a black swan event? And you all were about to tell me it's totally not a black swan event because it was entirely predictable that the coronavirus known as SARS-CoV-2, which causes the disease COVID-19, was going to actually reach the United States and parts of Western Europe because these things don't tend to stay in one place. Is that basically the position of everyone on
I
the panel?
mean, I think when we first detected it, the thing we should realize is when we first detected is not when the first people actually enter the country with it. The second we detect people with it and the second it becomes a pandemic of this size, the least we could do is at least prepare a little bit more ahead of time. It would have been nice not having a panic attack every time the news came on because apparently the government has nowhere near enough ventilators because, oh no, they couldn't have seen this happening.
Wait, where's this?
The United States, right?
Oh God! In Canada, we have like I don't know how to describe this because I'm not exactly sure what fucking law it is or whatever, but basically we have a plan for pandemics.
Well, the U.S. put it this way. You know, the U.S. has a population of what, 360 something million. I might be
Yeah.
very wrong, but roughly
344 million.
344. Yeah.
Yeah.
344
Yeah, and you
million.
have
Do you know
like
how many? Do you know how
1%
many?
hoarding
No.
everything.
Do you
Go
know?
on.
Do you know how many hospital beds we have in this country?
A lot.
Do you tell?
We have 900,000
No,
total.
are you serious? We only have 900,000.
That's how many. Yeah, that's how many hospital beds we have.
Build
You can
more
thank
hospital
private.
beds.
You can thank private healthcare for that because
Yeah.
they have. They don't have. They don't have the.
That's what
They want to
happens
make
when people
more
care
money
about
for
money and not people in power.
But essentially, we're kind of up to it. I'm not surprised the US is going full ham on trying to clamp down on it. Because if we have more than 1 million people infected at once, our hospitals are 100% overwhelmed because already we need to deal with people who do other shit, like the shit tons of people who have diabetes in this country who need like regular fucking visits. The massive amount of people who are already getting injured because of pre-existing conditions that they kind of let build up because doctor's appointments are expensive. Our hospital system could very well be overwhelmed to the point where, like how reports have come out in Italy where they've needed to do this as well, where we need to pick and choose based on who we think has the best chance who gets the ventilator.
Or who has the most money, you mean?
Oh yeah, that too.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of
Pretty
all. That's
much
always
just
how it's
that.
gonna be. So
Oh. I see. Well, not
Okay.
in Canada.
Canada.
So speaking of Canada, anyway, because you're the only Canadian here on the panel, I think. Hara, is that right?
I believe so.
So in terms of how Canada's response to this was, because I think everyone knows the United States sort of like response at this point. In terms of Canada's response, did Canada, in your view, did the politicians actually start preparing for this before it actually reached them, or did they only begin to respond to it once it was upon them?
I believe I can't remember maybe Chris might know the last, I don't know, pandemic that happened. Maybe it was the World War II one he was talking about before, but we had some kind of bad pandemic or something, so we've always had like some prepared plan.
Are we talking about World? Are you
pandemic?
talking about World War One? The after.
I'm not sure.
Spanish influenza,
I
1918.
think Canada was affected by the first SARS and possibly affected
Yes,
by the
SARS
MERS
as well was scary, but the thing with SARS was there was only like, if my memory is serving me correctly, there was only like a handful of cases.
And there was also swine flu, wasn't there?
Yes, but
H1N1.
swine flu pretty much didn't affect us.
Okay.
Okay, swine flu came and left. I think I didn't even hear of anyone who got it. This one's
I
a little
had it. It was a very mild thing. It was literally the flu.
So
but
it wasn't killing anyone. Okay,
I do remember it from the swine flu. There was this hilarious picture. It was like a meme. It was like a meme, but before they were called memes, and it was of this like little girl kissing a pig on the snout.
What the hell?
Okay. Anyways, what was I talking about? Fuck.
You have to get in touch with British.
You're saying that Canada has experienced stuff before.
I now that I think about it, I was around during the SARS pandemic and the swine flu, so I remember that the SARS was a very big scare, although there was limited damage in Canada. Then there was swine flu, where it was like people didn't really take it seriously and nobody really got infected. And now we're on this coronavirus, and people are scared to death, but people are actually getting it and dying. So I think that our government has locked down most of our hospitals. Like they won't let people just walk in.
Like dangerous, maybe.
It's actually stopping people from spreading it because a hospital is one of the worst melting pot for spreading viruses.
Yeah, I feel sad for the doctors and nurses. Like, I mean, they're heroes. Like going in like that, but
guaranteed a lot of money. If the government didn't pay for my health, a single psychiatrist appointment would be something like $8,000. There's no way I could afford that. But because I'm like I have $0. So, anyways,
I mean, in the U.S., I can say from personal experience, and I'm lucky because I'm still on my parents' health insurance plan, which means I think in the U.S. you typically get that till you're 26.
26. No,
And-
I forget if it stops. They cut you off when you turn 26,
it
or if
also
26
depends
is
on
the
your
last year, you
status.
can do it.
Yeah, I honestly forget, but essentially, even with that though, first of all, if I didn't have that, my medication costs would probably be around $2,000 a month.
Yeah, that's insane.
And
That's overcharge.
my
Plus-
therapy appointments are about roughly $200 each, and they are
I love
once
how
a week.
mental health is valued less in the States. It's fucking funny.
It's
But
kinda
anyways,
true.
as
It's
far
a
as
part of
statistics
healthcare.
go and what
Yeah.
I was talking about and what Ray asked me, not to get too derailed here, I think the total cases in Canada at the moment are 873 people have contacted the virus. 22 people have died. 13
Okay.
people have recovered.
Okay.
So that's as big as it gets. In my area, there's like maybe 2 to 5 confirmed cases. I'm not entirely sure. But
Okay.
everyone is literally self-isolating. I've gotten an email from almost every kind of government facility, Service Ontario, the banks and all
Yeah,
that, telling
encouraging
me
you to
not
stay
to
at home.
come out, saying it's
Okay.
all good. And they even offered me support. We are here for you if you need us, the banks and shit. In
The
case,
banks, they're there for you.
Wow.
yeah,
bank.
literally, Scotiabank told me one bank card I haven't used since I was 18 because it was for my inheritance. They told me if I needed help that they could come to me financially. If say
Amazing.
I was being fucked over at
Your
work.
banks actually want to help you,
Yes,
and not
and
just
there's a
charge you
law
like
as
don't wanna
well.
how the
help us.
global market
There's
breaks.
I have a
laws.
credit union. I have a credit
There's
union. I don't
laws
have a
here
bank.
as well called the labor union, I think, or the I don't know, labor board or something, where workers have, rights where you cannot work someone a certain amount of hours, like
Mhm.
extreme overtime, all that stuff. But when it comes to like this pandemic stuff, the government is basically like, you can't fire and bullshit anybody right now because people need to be inside. So fuck you. So
I just-
basically, people who run businesses are running it alone right now
That
without
reminds me.
employees.
Wow.
That actually reminds me something I want to ask Chicago, because he and I essentially we're fellow travelers in the same circles. But Chicago, do you think there are libertarians in pandemics?
Yes.
I'm on the fence with that one, because I do realize that, you know what, as much as I hate to say it, some of these stimulus things might actually be for the best.
Libertarians also aren't purists, unless you're talking to the weird hoppy and alt-right
But
morons.
they're not
Well,
because
wait,
they're
so you
all
guys
right though.
accept-
They're not even they're not even
So
like
you guys accept then that in unprecedented circumstances such as this,
In
everyone needs to
unprecedented
basically be given this
circumstances,
bailout style
Yeah.
scenario because otherwise the economy is not going to survive.
basically
I did
for
not-
me. It's,
I
it's
did
back
not
at-
say that. I did not say that regarding the bailout. Actually,
So for me, oh,
may you please not talk over me, Politicrat.
okay, I apologize.
They're
Okay.
excitable.
So what I mean is, for supporting like quarantines and stuff, yeah, libertarians would do that because it is for the greater good for the community.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Which, if everyone consents to it, well, then it's fine.
I like you
Okay.
right now. Wow, I never thought I'd agree with you on something.
So
This is
for
good.
me, I'm generally against bailouts. However, I
Why?
would actually take this a little further and say that a cash bailout in the case of a pandemic, something that cannot be helped, that I think there is a utilitarian argument to be made for that.
Then
Whereas-
what's the point
British
of
cons-
having any right-wing
whereas-
economics?
Whereas
British
no, but-
conservatives also made a similar explanation for what they're doing as well, where when they were asked how they're doing these large fiscal actions that involve essentially taking money from the taxpayer and then pushing it toward particular locations, or just literally creating money and then sending it to them by expanding the balance sheet. Sorry, by expanding the money supply and then essentially dropping it on people's balance sheets. Their explanation for why you should be able to do this and then still turn around and say that you're within the framework of center-right European politics. The reason they're saying you should be able to do that is because, in their view, they're saying that the conservative behavior they exhibited over the past 5 to 10 years is what legitimates their ability to use this stuff in a crisis. Do you guys believe that that is a logical explanation they're bringing?
Not really.
That the reason they're
honestly.
conservative normally is because so that they'll have quote resources available for a crisis, so called.
I mean,
Selfish political systems are always going to crash when you have to save everybody.
Sense. It makes logical sense, but I think they're saving face. Honestly, that's
yeah. I believe that's why I said there's
But
so
so-
called
no, but-
explanation because
so-
I mean they could have also just like prepared for it before it happened, which probably would have been better than this.
So, and I say this as somebody who really does not like bailouts, but I think in this instance there is a
But why?
justification. But back in 2008, there was absolutely no justification for the bailout. No bailing out
Okay.
the banks.
Do
No,
you
I
believe
think
that
controlling inflation.
bailouts a moral hazard then?
It depends. I think it's a case by case basis. In this
Okay,
case,
but I mean,
Jacob,
do you
how
believe
mu-
the 2008 no, I mean to be specific. I mean, do you believe that the 2008 bailouts were a moral hazard?
what do you mean moral hazard? I mean,
By
I
this,
don't
I mean,
think, I
by this,
don't
I
think
mean
we should have
rewarding
done
bad
it.
behavior. When people talk about moral hazards, rewarding or encouraging bad behavior.
Oh yeah, I think it was encouraging bad behavior, essentially, especially on the part of the banks.
Okay.
Bad
So-
behavior.
so-
what?
Nobody even
be
went to
clear-
jail then. Nobody went
so-
to jail.
so to be
Somebody should have gone to jail.
So to be absolutely clear on the criterion you're using here, if the state expands the money supply and or takes up taxation, whichever order you want to see it in, depending on like how much you like modern monetary theory or not,
I'm not a fan.
and then moves that money into the hands of like large banks, for example, you are not so keen on this if the banks are the same ones who created the crisis. But in a scenario where it's like an act of nature has hit you with a natural disaster of some sort, then you're okay with it in that scenario because then it's actually no one's fault and you can't say that there was a moral hazard involved. Is
Oh,
that basically
precisely.
where you're going?
Precisely.
Okay, all right.
Well, Jacob, my question is,
Hey,
how much
hey,
money do you have in the bank? Because the truth is, if one of
My-
those
my
banks
stuff
was
is
the
in
one
stocks,
involved in the
okay?
crisis, and if they lost all of that, the people who keep their money in the bank will lose that money if a bank just goes under.
How can a
Well, I
bank
was-
just
well, I-
go
like,
under?
I was
Interesting
against-
argument by Will. No, I'll let Politicrat address that actually, because yes, this is an argument that even Dick Cheney made at the time as well, where people asked him how could you do this, and he responded in 2008 by saying that if you don't prop up the center of the capitalist system, which is in fact banks, then everything
Ew.
implodes and you're left you're left with like only anarchy, which of course obviously Dick Cheney does not want. So
Of course, I'm more of a
Anarchy.
fan of having a national bank instead of a bunch of fucking private ones, but
you
you
realize
know,
that the private banks own our national bank, right? That's the whole point of the Federal Reserve, and I think Chicago can probably say even more about that than I
Humans
can.
are funny.
Other
They're
than
so
ending the
obsessed with
Fed, not
imaginary
really.
paper money.
Ending the Fed, yeah, no, the Fed,
Yeah.
the Fed. We at least need to audit the Fed. Come on, I mean,
No, just end it.
there's some shady
nah,
shit
fuck
going
the
on.
Fed. Just get rid of the middleman.
How
make a
about fuck
national
money?
bank.
Let's burn all
Barter?
money in the concept of it.
Barter. Let's barter.
Bartering is a
sounds
form of
like
money.
not fun.
It's a waste of resource anyway to create money.
That is kind of.
Let's
If you
just
use
use
anything to
imperial.
exchange
Guys.
anything, it's a money. So you can't
Guys,
just
let's
abolish
just
money.
use imperial
You
credit
could.
or just
Why-
pure
everything's
unadulterated
always just you
faith in the
can't.
God Emperor of mankind.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, probably not a direction we want to go in on that one.
LOL.
But yeah,
But I want my space
back-
marines, Ray. Stop
back to the-
destroying my dreams.
Keep that shit in video games.
Back to all about this being a Black Swan event, though. I don't think it was, but I think it was to Donald Trump.
Okay. Yeah, but
I
you
don't
know,
know
well,
about
you know what they
that.
say. Perhaps like breakfast tomorrow morning will be a Black Swan event to Donald Trump at this point. I have no idea what goes on in his head. It's completely like it's just beyond comprehension. I'm sure you all have seen these compilation videos of like Trump denying the crisis right up until
He
basically.
did that on
this
purpose.
month.
He
Yeah,
literally
we
did
just-
that on
I-
purpose.
Okay,
They
the thing
discovered
is,
that
I
he
think
did
he's
this
just
on
an
purpose.
idiot. I have always just written Trump off as an idiot.
Okay,
Like, I
well,
don't-
if you just write people off as idiots, one, You're making yourself vulnerable to people who would easily take advantage of you by being gullible for their behavior. What else? Two, it's ableist.
Okay.
So I'd
okay.
appreciate you not just calling people idiots
Alright,
and
so
then
to-
just basing
about
that on
Donald
their
Trump.
To
entire
address where you're
character.
going-
I know.
To address where you're going with that, then, Hara, are you saying that Donald Trump is doing this on purpose because there is some money-making scheme behind why
Yes,
they
I
chose so long to
honestly
mention to
think
the
that.
American people? Well, don't
He-
worry.
I don't think he's
you
an
are
evil
quite
genius.
close.
I think he's
I'm
just
being
dumb.
asked a
You are-
question, you little fuck.
You are quite close to the reality because we're going to actually bring up an article on that precise issue at some point during this live stream, in which it will emerge that some of the people who are in the Republican Party were actually aware of the threat prior to it landing on them.
Oh yeah, no, they
Shit.
sold all their stocks or something. Yeah,
Yes, all of
we
that
need to
stock movements. All of
prosecute
those
those
stock
guys.
movements.
How did Trump
Yep.
make all his money? A lot of it, at least.
Oh, he
What
had
industry?
a small loan of $1 billion.
No,
from
no,
Stat.
no. Nowadays, what industry?
What do you mean? He owns fucking
Real
tons
estate.
of shit.
What
estate.
a
And he
lot of
doesn't
that
pay
real
taxes.
estate
rich as he
is
says he is.
hotels.
And he takes money
and
out of
resorts
his donation
golf
funds. What do you
clubs.
mean? How does
What
he have money?
happens when you shut down the country and don't allow people to go out to,
No, that won't stop
resorts
Donald Trump.
and hotels and golf clubs? I'm
That won't
saying the
stop
reason
him.
he probably postponed this for as long as he humanly possibly could was because he wanted his organizations to be able to milk the last of the money they could until they were forced to do it because hand forced just by fate
don't
and
know.
circumstance.
Actually, that's an interesting point as well. So it could be a confluence of forces then, that the party that he is ahead of was okay with doing this this stock market business prior to informing the people, and that Trump himself had a motivation to keep the country open for longer than it should have been open because of the fact that his businesses, which are hotels and other entertainment venues, depend on people moving around, which runs obviously contrary to the idea of self-isolation.
And the
Truth is what I think on this matter, which is the case with everything on Trump, honestly, is Republicans take advantage of
This
the
is a
fact
fucking
that he
Will show.
always acts in his own self-interest.
Well, most people do anyway. I mean, that's kind of the sad truth.
But he does
Or the
it
good truth.
he does it purely exclusively and in such a boneheaded one-directional way. This dude doesn't create a masterclass plan to eventually get what he wants. He just points to it and says, "I want it. Give it to me now."
You even got the accent right. I'll just circle back
I
to
don't
where we were with
know.
to where we were with Hara because I want to make sure that we actually did finish the entirety of the question that I was asking her. What was I actually asking you before we went down
Who
this path?
knows? Because people like to talk over me, so we can just move on. I forgot.
No, I'm pretty sure it was. I was asking you whether you thought that whether you thought that Trump was engaged in this behavior on purpose. To which you answered yes, and I think everyone
Yes,
else
and
also
then I was
agreed that there
talked
is a
over.
deliberation involved.
Yeah, and then it was just, he's an idiot. It's a little
Yes,
bit more
but no, but-
complicated than that.
Yeah,
Especially as a
exactly.
mental health advocate, idiot doesn't mean anything to me.
I don't think he's an idiot. I think he's a narcissist.
Well, he's
You can
definitely
be,
that.
I don't understand what, now it's more ableism with the narcissism.
I'm not
But
saying
it might be the truth.
fully
Though.
diagnosed.
It doesn't matter. What does that have to do with...
Okay, in that case, he displays narcissistic tendencies. That might be the best way
So?
to put it.
Do you know there are narcissists out there who are self-aware and have to go to therapy to help themselves because lack of empathy is a real
I will
thing?
give you credit if you choose to go to therapy and you get the help you
How do you
need.
choose to go to therapy in a state... listen to me, fuckface. You talk over everyone. I'm going to talk over you now, okay? I want to know how people get health care when they have to pay fucking thousands and thousands of dollars for it and almost nobody makes $15,000 a year.
You can make exceptions for them.
Are you
I
fucking
will say
kidding?
This much.
Why is there special exceptions? But
then
a
you have,
certain...
now
you have people
you
like
are talking-
sociopaths who have a
you are
mental illness
talking-
who don't care either
Okay.
way.
God, Will.
Sociopaths
You are
generally don't want
both
help.
talking over me now. Allow me to
Because
formulate
this
my
was the
response.
question asked towards me, Will.
And I responded to one you put towards
I didn't
my
ask you
argument.
nothing.
What I was gonna say is, you're right. Our mental health care system is completely unfair. But to someone like Donald
Not so
Trump,
much in
who, no
Canada.
offense, I know not in Canada, but to someone
Well, it
like
is
Donald
offensive if
Trump,
you're going to use ableist terms, is what I'm trying to tell you.
okay, if you're going to call people out for talking over them, I would advise you to act on the same interest.
No, I'm just treating you the way you talk to me. But continue. I still haven't finished my
Okay.
question.
Ladies,
How
you're
I
both
will
pretty.
how I will continue is simply that Donald Trump has no excuse. Donald Trump has the money. He has the wherewithal. He probably has had people tell him. I am saying when I think he is a narcissist, I am not saying that in the tragic way, unfortunately. Maybe this is something sad for me. I have had personal experience with people
Then that's
who
a
suffer
bias.
from narcissism. It is a bit of a bias, but what
There
I
you
will
go.
say
So don't
is
use
unless
it.
you
Oh my
unless
God.
you work to act against it, if someone has no
That's
empathy, they do not deserve empathy in turn.
Sociopaths do not
ableist.
deserve empathy. Sociopaths.
Wow. You're talking to a mental health advocate. Right
Yeah,
now.
you are too. So
Yeah, so you put down certain types because you've just labeled them with a stigma of their behavior.
Well, I mean, it's
sociopath.
not-
You know,
is an
5% of people who are mentally ill actually get violent.
well,
yeah,
we're
I
talking
know,
about-
but I'm talking
we're
about
That you
sociopaths.
know,
Trump
so
here,
you
though.
know it's actually the small percentage of the mentally ill
I
that
never
actually
said
do
anything.
shitty things.
I never said anything about shitty things or violence. I never said that
Well,
at all.
I
What
had
did
just
you
asked
say?
somebody not to call him an idiot and a narcissist and all this. Why can't we talk
But
about what
idiot,
he's
but no,
doing?
but
Like
idiot
the
is- but
question I
idiot-
was asked,
idiot is
why
not-
do oh my
idiot is
God.
not an
I
ableist
hate men,
term, though.
dude.
Idiot is just a word to
I don't
describe
care what
somebody
you
who's
think
stupid.
of
It's not
it.
a mental
I'm
illness.
telling you.
Idiocy is not a mental illness.
Oh my God.
Jacob, you're not helping your point.
No,
Okay,
you're not.
let us
Can I-
move on.
You know what? I'm going to move on because I'm not. Every time I try to answer this question, Ray, I'm just getting talked over. So forget it. We'll move on. Talk about it another stream. Maybe without these guys here or something. So I can actually say shit.
Well, I mean, I thought that you did really answer the question that I asked you, which was
I was
asked,
trying to get into like Trump and like his like banks and shit like that, and a potential collapse of banks, and like everybody going bankrupt and just resetting everything. But I had to get argued with about ableism instead.
Well, I mean, from my perspective, I mean, we're talking about Donald Trump. It's one of those
It
things.
doesn't matter. I don't give a fuck if we're talking about Ted Bundy, okay? Who is a fucking evil person, okay? You do not use ableism to put someone down. Ever. And I'm not tolerating it anymore. It's not fucking funny to me. It's not just words to me, all right? Fair enough?
Well, all right, fair enough.
If I hear another
People have
fucking
strong
R
views on these
word,
things.
idiot, narcissist, it's always mental health with you people. Why don't we look at the actual details of the situation?
Yeah, why
right
don't we
now,
actually get
we
back on
have a
topic?
man who is a fucking puppet. It doesn't matter what he has or how he acts like, because he is a tool. Okay? He is used by his government, and he uses his government and back and forth. Everybody who has fucking money is in power, and they do whatever the fuck they want. Hence why there was a giant pedophile ring that went on and is still going on, and Epstein's probably been replaced, like lickety split. You people are fucking acting like this is a popularity contest where Trump's an idiot and he's in charge of everything. It's all his fault. Actually, he's a fucking puppet, just like the rest of the candidates. The only one who might not be a puppet would be Bernie Sanders, because they actually tried to shut him down.
What about Gabbard? They tried to shut Gabbard down even more than they did.
Anyone who doesn't listen, like when JFK was
LBJ.
assassinated, okay?
And the Fed.
I'm deranged.
Yeah. LBJ and the Fed.
I'm getting really fucking tired of this shit.
Yeah, maybe we should get back on topic. Like, actually, because we aren't
Yeah,
really...
I will totally take you guys back on topic on this one. The next thing, because I mean, we all agree, definitely not a black swan event. It is possible for them to have known what was coming before it reached them, particularly since they had like a whole month and a half to see it play out in Asia before it actually landed in Western Europe and the United States. So, for everyone on the panel, as far as I can see, is basically people who have not been going outside because of the fact that shelter in place or self-isolation or whatever you want to call it is in effect, right?
Well, I've been going to work. I've actually been going to work still, so...
Oh, you've still been going to work. I'm going to ask you questions about that then. So
Okay.
with the exception of you, I'm assuming that everyone else has been able to basically avoid having to interact with
Yes, that is true.
with other human beings during this time period, which is
I
obviously an
mean,
upside.
I'm with my family, so my sister and my parents are here, but
But I mean, obviously, you're
mostly,
not
yeah.
you're not going out and sort of like interacting with the virus.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good luck if you're poor, though, because you will be fucking fired if you don't go out and risk your life for
Yeah,
capitalism.
we are going to get to that
I'm going for a
because
smoke
yes,
break.
this
You
does
guys
seem
continue.
this does seem to be a class. There are class divisions that seem to exist within this crisis, which is that there are some people who have jobs in
Seem
which
to.
it is able to, it's possible to just stay at
Even
home.
in
And then-
Canada, where healthcare is covered, people can't get it all the time.
yeah, I mean, obviously, that's what I'm saying.
It's obvious. It's not like a seems to be thing. There's a
And in
huge
terms of the ability,
classes.
and in terms of the ability to stay at home versus the ability to not stay at home because someone might be attempting to fire you, for example, obviously there are a large number of professions within the working class where they don't have the ability to work from home, and also possibly their boss is actually putting pressure on them to continue to work despite the fact that the risk is high. So we will of course get to that. In the meantime, there is a movement called #StayTheFuckHome, in which everyone is being asked to stay at home if they can, in order to prevent the pandemic from spreading further. So just going to share that onto the screen, and then we'll sort of go through it, and then you guys can tell me whether you agree with the aims of this movement. So hold on one second. So we should be in screen share coming up in just a second. I need to make a one-click thing for this. I'm tired of having to make multiple clicks in order to get this done. There you go. Right. So I'm assuming you all can see on screen gigantic text #StayTheFuckHome. So
Oh yeah.
it's a movement to stop the COVID-19 pandemic. So hold on, let me just make sure that there we go. Our governments are only slowly implementing measures to control the spread of SARS-CoV-2 and containing the COVID-19 pandemic. Slow reactions, public appeasement policies, and the urge to stabilize the economy have kept them from taking the measures needed to protect millions from this disease. However, it is not only the government's burden to bear. It's time for us as citizens of this earth to take action now and to do our part in fighting COVID-19. Let's put it bluntly, stay the fuck home.
Citizens of the Earth?
So this is, say again?
I said citizens of the Earth?
Yeah, well, that's how they phrased it.
Oh, okay.
So, I mean, just interpret that as like citizens of every country, because I mean,
Yeah.
technically, there's no such thing as the Earth citizen, right?
World citizen.
But basically, you guys can go to,
One day when we're Starship Troopers, it will be.
but basically, you guys can go. You guys can go.
I want Space Marines.
Hey, what? I mean, you guys can go to staythefuckhome.com and you'll see basically the same text that I'm reading from. So we go down. Self-quarantine manifesto. Yeah, it's a manifesto now. With no well-studied treatment and no viable vaccine available for at least another year, although it may be faster now given news has come out over the last 24 hours, but we'll get to that, I'm sure. The only effective way to keep the coronavirus pandemic at bay is to give the virus fewer chances of spreading. The following list of actions, ordered from easiest to implement to most effective in the fight against the pandemic, should serve as a set of loose guidelines for people who wish to join the movement and take action that can actually make a difference.
By staying the fuck home.
Yeah, so they've got a list of key points here. So the first one is don't panic but be alert. 2, wash your hands often and practice good cough and sneeze etiquette. 3, try to touch your face as little as possible, including your mouth, nose, and eyes. 4, practice social distancing, no hugs and kisses, no handshakes, no high fives. If you must, use safer alternatives. 5, do not attend concerts, stage plays, sporting events, or any other mass entertainment events. 6, refrain from visiting museums, exhibitions, movie theaters, nightclubs, and other entertainment venues. 7, stay away from social gatherings and events like club meetings, religious services, and private parties. 8, reduce travel to a minimum. Don't travel long distances if not absolutely necessary. 9, do not use public transportation if not absolutely necessary. 10, if you can work from home, work from home. Urge your employer to allow remote work instead, if needed. 11, replace as many social interactions as possible with remote alternatives like phone calls or video chat. 12, do not leave your home unless absolutely necessary. Now, of course, they go on to be very magnanimous about this, saying, please keep in mind that there is no right or wrong amount of actions to take. Only take the actions you feel comfortable with and that do not endanger your livelihood. Do not quit your job over this. However, keep in mind that every action helps. Why it's so important. SARS-CoV-2 is a highly infectious and potentially deadly virus that causes a respiratory disease called COVID-19. You might know it under one of its many other names. We'll just skip over the names. All of these refer to the same virus that this movement is trying to stop. Now, of course, obviously, some of the names that are listed there include the ones that like right-wing detractors of China like to use, for example.
Wuhan
But
flu.
exactly. Stuff like this, people ought to avoid. I'm just going to place highlighter. People should actually avoid referring to it under those terms. And of course, the reason why is because you don't want to stigmatize one country or another. However, if you're interacting with, like, let's say, crazy right-wingers who insist on calling it those names that are highlighted in the blue, the most important thing is to convince them to stay at home. Once they're at home and on the internet, then you can encourage them to stop referring to it in that way. So, priorities. The priorities is to keep everyone alive first, and then we can kind of reprimand them for their actual racism afterwards. So anyway, all of these refer to the same virus that this movement is trying to stop. Over the past weeks and months, the virus and corresponding disease have been compared over and over to the influenza virus and seasonal flu. Due to overlapping symptoms and a seemingly similar severity, this comparison comes naturally to a lot of people. However, looking at what we know so far about the new virus, the threat it poses to society is not easily brushed aside. 1. It's more contagious than the flu. With an estimated R0 between 1.4 to 6.49 and a mean estimate of 3.28, SARS-CoV-2 is more infectious and spreads much faster than seasonal flu, which has a median R0 of 1.28. 2, more deadly than the flu. The so-called case fatality rate of SARS-CoV-2 is estimated to be around 2%, meaning that an estimated 2% of people are getting diagnosed with COVID-19 and will succumb to it. In comparison, the CFR of seasonal influenza is estimated around 0.1%, which means that SARS-CoV-2 is estimated to be about 20 times more deadly than the seasonal flu, which is pretty dangerous. So, I don't know, avoid.
I had it a few months ago, or actually about a month ago, and it was not fun. So
Yeah. You've had it and recovered from it. I'm going to ask you about your experiences.
what, the No, the flu.
Oh, okay.
Not
I was
COVID.
thinking, okay, where were you? Okay. 3, possibility of severe symptoms. An estimated 15 to 20% of infected individuals suffer from severe symptoms that require medical attention, including pneumonia with shortness of breath and lower blood oxygen saturation. 4, no treatment, no vaccine, no immunity. As SARS-CoV-2 has only recently emerged, there is no well-studied treatment for COVID-19, and more research is needed in order to treat infected people efficiently. Likewise, there is no vaccine for SARS-CoV-2 yet, and the development of such a vaccine will take a significant amount of time. With no vaccines and no prior widespread immunity, everyone is a susceptible target for infection. While most infected people will only suffer from mild symptoms, this lack of herd immunity can lead to severe illness in a significant number of at-risk individuals. 5, exponential growth, which for some reason humans have a real problem with understanding exponential growth, because everyone's like totally surprised when it begins to increase at a faster rate consistently. But anyway, exponential growth. Due to a lack of immunity to this new virus, the entire human population is the upper limit of possible infections. And although exponential growth always seems slow at first, it can lead to unfathomably high numbers in a rather short time. With the number of infected people currently doubling in a matter of days, our medical systems will potentially be overloaded, which will lead to higher numbers of fatalities due to people not receiving the care they need. By joining the movement and therefore limiting possibilities for new infections, you are not only protecting yourself, but you are also helping to contain and limit the spread for everyone else, especially those who are at higher risk to suffer more severe consequences from this virus. If you care about this cause, please share it on social media via email, or just tell your friends and family about it. But please, just #stay the fuck home. So, with that done,
Beautifully said.
yeah. So what we need to do is everyone needs to actually obey that. So I'm assuming that everyone on this panel agrees that that was a pretty accurate summary of
Yeah,
how things need to be.
Yeah, it's definitely very accurate, which actually kind of what I've been doing lately is I've been reading a lot about the 1918 flu pandemic, and what's really kind of eerie is how similar that was worded to what the army basically said back in 1918 when, basically people were starting to drop dead basically from the flu. They basically came up with a very similar list of protocols where they basically said, stay home, don't go out, don't go to theaters, stop spitting in public. They basically said all those same things in 1918. And what's really eerie is just how much of what we're doing now, or what we should be doing now, is based on what we learned from 1918, where we were just totally unprepared and just, millions of people died. So it's a really eerie thing just seeing that after some of the stuff I've read.
Good news, guys, is that this isn't the Black Death, though. I mean, at least in terms of severity.
Look, it really depends what your age group is. I mean, I have a graph by the CDC here that breaks it down also.
So, like,
but,
I'm in like the 0.2%.
Until you are past 39 years old, you are only in a 0.2% risk. 40 to 49 is like 0.04. 50 to 59 is 1.3, and only after then, like 60 to 69 is 3.6, 70 to 79 is 8, and then it's when you're older than 80 is when it really gets risky, and when it's like 14.8. But it really depends. A lot of young people probably won't die. The thing that young people do need to realize, though, is if they get it and then give it to, say, their parents or their grandparents, they could die.
And this is while we're on this, we should also probably dispel maybe some of the rumors about certain things that can happen. Like I got really freaked out yesterday because I was reading something about how once a man gets it, there's like a certain % chance that he could be sterile or something.
Yeah, that's
But
fake.
It turns out it was a 4chan hoax.
Indeed. 4chan hoaxes are abound right now. So yes, do not fall into the 4chan hoaxes.
And I will say one thing that I think
Also,
we should also talk about.
That as well. There's another one that I'm not sure whether it's what level of hoax we're talking about, but there was another one that I saw where people are claiming that like the coronavirus can somehow magically possess you or something, and it creates a kind of Resident Evil style scenario.
That would be funny.
This also is obviously a hoax, and so if people tell you about corona zombies, that's not true either.
What, you didn't hear the zombie apocalypse started? Are you saying that I bought 15 shotguns and I bolted plate metal to my dad's Tesla for nothing?
Pretty
Dang
much.
it.
So
He's gonna be really pissed at me when he finds out.
I will say another thing, though, that why it's really important to follow those guidelines, though, is the potential for waves. One thing about 1918 that a lot of people don't realize is that it happened in waves. And the biggest reason why you want to flatten the curve with this particular pandemic is that you want to make sure that you don't have it reoccur for other waves, because basically what you had waves where it would happen. They would actually take steps to flatten the curve, and they would think, oh, hey, we're good, guys. And then they just go back to doing all the stuff that caused it to spread.
yeah,
Just remember, we're not fully out of this till the vaccine comes out.
I'll actually put on screen the graph from the study from imperial.ac.uk, that one that's been used on BBC News quite a lot to describe what the United States and the United Kingdom is attempting to do with this flatten the curve business. And then I'll explain to you a little bit of a sleight of hand that's been going on in terms of the way that certain media organizations have presented this curve, and also the way that they've done it in such a way as to cause you to believe certain things that the government has claimed, which have later turned out to be untrue. So let me just do a screen share on this once again, and we'll see if I can put that up. And then once you've looked at it, I'll ask you guys when it comes up on screen to tell me what the most immediately problematic thing that you guys see about this is when it comes up. So just give me a second, because there's something that should leap out to you as quite problematic from the moment that it comes up. Okay, there you go. So can you guys tell me what the most immediately problematic thing about that graph is in your viewpoint?
The critical care bed capacity.
Okay, yes,
They
that
do
stands out
nothing.
immediately, doesn't it? Because that red line at the bottom there means that no matter what you do, you're still screwed, right?
Yes.
So you'll notice that BBC News presents this without that red line there constantly, because it makes you assume somehow that the red line is somewhere above where the curve is. It actually isn't. So one of the only ways to get beneath that red line would be if you just actually had social distancing from the start and never allowed it to proliferate to that extent in the first place.
Well, you have to at least admire China's efficiency, and how they managed to build all those hospitals so quickly, to get all those beds ready. I mean, it could have been a hoax propagated by their government just to show the rest of the world the virtue signal, but assuming that they actually did that, I mean, that might not be a terrible thing to potentially emulate.
China has the means to do that, though. They have
Well, they're-
near authoritarian control over their people. In the U.S., one problem with this is with social distancing is some won't abide
Yeah,
by.
and the difference is like China, just like from a cultural perspective, going back thousands of years, they are more like willing to listen to authority. It's a cultural thing, like going back to like legalism and Qin Shi Huang back during the 4th century.
It's just they're building with prefabricates, and it's just much faster this way.
That and those hospitals are already starting to somewhat fall apart.
Yeah, I mean, they weren't meant to be permanent anyway.
Yes.
They haven't even been up for 2
They were
months and they're
literally
already
described
falling
as
apart. That's
temporary
pretty bad.
hospitals.
It has nothing to do with their totalitarianism. It's just different building techniques, and they already have factories in place.
They had to rush it. There were a lot of prefab buildings that they stuck together into that as well. Wasn't that the case?
Yeah.
Also true.
Yeah. So I would expect that it would be quite a flimsy structure because it was only supposed to be temporary hospitals in Wuhan when they built those ones anyway.
There wasn't like they weren't like hospitals. They were just like places for people to be quarantined at and get basic treatment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because that is the big thing that tends to just overwhelm your system. That the number of people who need to be in a bed receiving basic treatment is what just completely overwhelms a otherwise sophisticated system.
Yes, exactly. And also to isolate some people who are just not willing to listen.
Also, yes, there were reports of that going on as well, where some people were taken against their will to the quarantine centers, and then also there were some people who were behaving erratically, who basically had their like doors bolted shut and stuff in order to make sure they couldn't violate the quarantine. So it's one of those things where the People's Republic of China was capable of doing things
"Quote unquote republic."
Which are usually put out as like advisories in Western countries. Like, we advise you to stay indoors, right? Whereas in the PRC, it was kind of like, yeah, you're advised to stay indoors, and then if you don't obey, there's something else that happens afterwards.
How many do you
You're
think
not advised, you're told.
How many people do you think the government actually ended up killing because of this?
Well, I mean, there's literally no way to know.
Did you see? There was also. I heard that the very first person to be infected by the coronavirus in North Korea was shot.
Yeah, because
that may be a meme. That may be a meme.
Based.
No one's confirmed any news out of North Korea.
Government healthcare, guys.
No, this was a diplomat who returned from China, and he was forbidden from leaving his house, and he went to a public restaurant. He was just.
Oh, really? That happened? It actually happened?
Yes.
Okay.
Based in North Korea.
Amazing.
The most efficient country with quarantine.
So does that mean that the virus is actually in North Korea then and spreading because of what that official allegedly did?
North Korea didn't confirm anything, but we have some reports coming from South Korea.
North Korea is dark right now.
Okay.
Well, I don't think they're going to tell us any official reports on whether or not they have the virus.
But
For all we know, Kim Jong-un could be dead.
South Korean military said that they do, in fact, have cases of COVID-19.
Okay. So obviously South Korea has sufficient intelligence to find these things out. So yeah, I wonder how they're dealing with that. I mean, we'll find out eventually.
Yeah, maybe in 100 years. There was a massive pandemic in North Korea. I think that
they're probably just not telling their people about it and then just like locking up the people who are showing symptoms.
A man has fallen ill with the coronavirus.
Kind of like what Trump was doing. Shit.
When exactly did we learn about this
thing
that happened in North Korea in the 90s? Wasn't that like just like 10 years ago that we learned about that?
Well, I think like North Korea might do like
yeah, like they had a massive famine and basically hundreds of thousands of people starved.
Oh yes,
Yeah, and
North
fake
Korea is
fucking
always
grocery
involved in that.
stores for like
Yes, and the
visitors.
fake grocery stores with the plastic vegetables and stuff.
Wait,
That was
wasn't that from
really
that one movie with like Seth Rogen?
Yeah, but it's based on
no,
a
but
truth.
it's based on actual events that occurred as well. That
Yeah.
part with the plastic vegetables thing, that was a jab at something they actually did.
And then same with they also say that Kim Jong Un apparently doesn't poop.
Which is a ridiculous claim. I have no
I
idea.
don't know if that's the case, but if it's true, I would lose my shit.
I wish I didn't have to poop.
You
Women
would
don't
lose your
poop.
shit, but
We
he
don't
couldn't.
fart either.
Guys. So basically, we need to go to the other slide I was going to display for the United Kingdom, which is going to be county expected hospitalization per 1,000 for general hospitalization and critical care in England and Wales, and then you'll see the disparity between these things. So just hold on 1 second while we do that. And then we'll discuss like what that means, even in a case where it was possible to fund an NHS. Somehow we have a government in the United Kingdom that's created a scenario where there is still insufficient stuff. And then we'll talk about how we got to that point. Because I'm sure there are some British listeners who probably want to hear our opinions on this. And goodness, do I have opinions. So
Bojo, what Bojo's up to?
yes, what has Boris Johnson been doing or not doing, or the Conservatives in general since 2011? What have they not been doing?
Are we gonna break soon?
Yes, and immediately after that, we're going to have our mandatory, like, 5-minute break and then come back. So let me see if I do a share on that. Bam, there we go. Right. So I'm assuming you all can see this graph. Well, it's not really a graph. It's a graphic, right? You all have seen the graphic. So on the graphic, you can see on the one side, the side where it's the blue and green colors, you've got some figures, which is expected hospitalization per 1,000. So some of these figures are quite high compared to critical care. So if you look at London, for example, you see London enumerated there at 1.7. And then if you look on the left-hand side of the graph, London is there at 6.2. So you can imagine that if you understand that London is actually the epicenter of the infections in the United Kingdom, that's an extremely bad set of situations to be in. Because it's not just about what your overall system is capable of. It's a matter of like, what are the logistics of people getting ill in a particular area in which you happen to have not insufficient beds, because then you have to start spreading them out elsewhere, don't you? And of course, when you do that, you introduce the risk of actually spreading the virus further.
And we also have to add that the United Kingdom has less intense care units than Romania and Poland per capita.
Yeah,
Sounds
it's
like
extremely
something I
disturbing.
said earlier about hospitals being a breeding ground for viruses.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you're moving people around constantly, it becomes more, you start to have more of a risk. And something else which is worth mentioning on this issue is that in the United Kingdom, there were actually 3 different, how do you describe these things? Training exercises, 3 different training exercises, and it was called exercise Cygnus, which is spelled Cygnus. And I think if you guys literally just put exercise Cygnus in on Twitter, it'll probably bring up a bunch of people talking about it, because they probably would be by now. And exercise Cygnus was about, believe it or not, exactly the scenario which is presently playing out. Exercise Cygnus was carried out in 2014 and in 2016, and under a slightly different name. There was also a review done, I think, in 2011, where they found there was insufficient ventilators, and then in 2014 and 2016, exercise Cygnus was carried out, and that was also met with failure because there were insufficient resources on every level to handle a pandemic of this type. And so Conservatives would have been actually aware of this fact, and they chose to do a lot of things other than fixing it, I suppose. So, I mean, I think from their position, politically speaking, I mean, I don't know how they're going to actually try to spin their way out of this in coming days, but when Monday comes and journalists begin to ask them about this, I just wonder what they will say, given that they actually had the opportunity. They had the opportunity to address exactly the issue which is presently playing out.
I
The
can
novel
guess what they'll
coronavirus
say.
appears out of nowhere. There was also 2018. I forgot about that one as well. There was also the 2018 global pandemic rehearsal that went on as well, where there was there was like a novel coronavirus was supposedly coming out of Brazil or something, and then you had to sort of tabletop simulate how you were going to get out of it, and sort of, the globe's leaders went through it, and every single country failed. So, like, what did leaders do in response to that? This is something that I think more journalists need to ask. Like, how did you go through like 3 or 4 different simulations, and then you failed them all, and then nothing was done in order to actually beat
then
things
did it
up?
turn out-
I
didn't it turn
can
out that they
answer
thought-
why
hey,
journalists.
Will, let me just ask if this is the same one real quick. But was this the same one where they thought they had contained it, but then another 6 months of game time went by, and then it got out of hand again? Is this the same one?
I can't remember the exact details of how they failed it, but I just
It
know
was
that
like
they did.
60 million ended up dying in the end or something.
It was some exceedingly large number that they ended up with at the end, though. Yes, it was a massive failure.
What I was gonna say is, even if a journalist asks that, all they're going to respond with is, "We could have never seen this coming, though." And the truth is because the thing is conservatives are reactionary when it comes to these types of crises, purely by definition. They are conservative. They don't want to build up the vast amount of resources and spend the vast amount of money it would require to
Republicans
prepare
do,
us
though.
for something
I
that
wouldn't
might
make
happen.
blanket terms and statements on entire ideologies, Will. It did not end well the last time you did that in this stream.
I'm saying that is more of in general, and I'm not saying that it's something that now doesn't seem ridiculous. To be fair, before coronavirus, if you asked a politician, hey, should we spend like $250 billion on ventilators just in case? I'm pretty sure both the left and the right would tell you to go screw yourself. It's not even really just conservatives, honestly. It's kind of just us as a people. We are very reactionary. We don't do things until we have to. Why do you think the climate is fucking going to shit?
This is
LOL, are you
unfortunate.
blaming mass pollution and all that shit on civilians and not perhaps giant industries and companies?
It's on
that
all of
profit
us
off
a little bit. It's
But
on
not really.
more.
No.
China and
The
India,
difference
guys.
between
China
a
and India.
fucking factory and a town is immense, okay? It's not civilization and people's fault. It's literally those in power that have decided to be in power for selfish reasons only.
There are voters who have these things put to them sometimes at elections and who make the wrong choices. Would you say that sometimes the people doing the voting also share the wrong views, which cause people to have these
I
short-term
think
thinking?
it's a responsibility of the government to keep their people educated because
I
that is
agree.
really good if there's going to be a government, so to speak.
But what
Yeah.
happens when
I don't think
you
they should
vote
admit it. I don't think they should administer it, like administer the education, but I think they should provide it.
No, yeah, basically, what you're talking about, whoever was saying people don't do anything unless they have to, that's completely scientifically inaccurate, especially with children. If you introduce them, like, there's been plenty of studies, like, where they do a literal, fully nature, like, playground school, where
Mhm.
children can choose when to go and study, and it seems they study more when they have the freedom to do so, because it's human nature to learn. It's human nature to
Okay.
Exactly. Tabula
do
rasa, guys.
But one thing I
Do you
will
think
say
that
there
being-
is,
Do you
aren't
think they're being
you making
hold on,
an
Will? Before you
assumption
go
about the
with
whole
that,
human
Will.
race?
Before you go with that, Will, do you think
Okay.
Hara, that people are being that people, particularly in Western Anglo-Saxon English-speaking countries, do you think that they're being manipulated then by
Yes.
people in power into voting for short-term solutions that
I
are profitable for those in power? Is that what you're
I
saying?
basically believe that people who are voting for the corrupt people in power feel as though they are one of them in a way that manipulates white people, like, almost worldwide. It's just like a white supremacy thing. It's weird. It's like you're kind of born and raised, internalized to be like a biased, white people supreme kind of person, whether you realize it or not, whether you really feel that way or not. And it just kind of like, that's a method of how the government gets votes. And if that doesn't work by manipulating and not properly educating their populace, then they literally rig elections.
I wouldn't
you
go that.
think
I wouldn't
that-
go.
I just want to get in there with one more question before I let Will put his answer in. Then, so Hara, do you also think, and you don't have to address this now, you could actually just say to me that we will cover this later, and I'm fine with that. But
Okay.
do you think that the sort of like latent white supremacy point that you were raising there also has something to do with the fact that there were so many leaders in the Western world who looked to what was happening in China and didn't seem to react to it, even though there was like 2 whole months of just nonstop Chinese suffering before it reached them, because in some bizarre way they somehow thought that when the virus reached their countries
was
that
just
it would
not,
actually behave it would behave
Yeah.
somehow differently, or that it was just going to be different automatically because of some
It's a weird white mentality where nobody could ever do anything evil, and yet they never give a shit about anybody, and yet nothing bad could ever happen, but never forget 9/11. Like, it's back and forth.
It's
okay.
So I agree. I actually
my-
agree with
my-
Laura, but I wouldn't say the racial element. I would disagree with the racial element to an
Yeah,
extent.
are you denying
But-
the existence of an
Jacob-
aggression towards racial people?
Oh
Like,
no, not at all. I'm just saying I don't think that is a fundamental component of it, but I do think
really?
you are.
So you've never heard or witnessed racism within your family?
No. I think
No,
I
he's
have
not.
I think he's just
Never
about
once
to say.
have.
I think he's just about to say that he's going to say that he doesn't think it's that the slow response to COVID-19 can be racialized in that way. I think he's going to say that governments believe that liberal democracy contains some components which would make it somehow less susceptible to being hit by COVID-19. Is that where you're going to go with it?
Oh, never mind. I mean, I guess we're kind of going off topic here. I don't want to have to. I was just saying that.
look.
I don't think the government is trying to, specifically through its policies, try to internalize racism, like towards the entire populace.
Then explain Jim Crow.
Well, yeah, no, I'm just saying currently, today, right now.
No, they still do it today, like
I'm not
forced
saying they don't.
sterilization of indigenous women.
I'm not saying they don't, but I'm just saying I don't think that is like their number one priority.
I think that's what people use naturally because they like to be in groups and to feel superior.
I mean,
And
every
they
group
use
has
that to manipulate
bias.
the general populace that doesn't really know better because they don't educate them.
I mean, in-group bias is natural from a biological perspective.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly. So
All right.
when you use that element to manipulate human beings at a basic level using race and it works,
I mean, I think we can see that on
Do you
both the
agree-
left and the right, though.
Politicrat. Then, do you agree that I'm trying to strike a sort of middle position between what you two are saying here? Do you think that when Donald Trump got up on stage and started referring to a quote unquote virus that he was placing a name of a particular ethnic group in front of, for example, like when he keeps doing that, even though the WHO have told him that he shouldn't actually do that because it's stigmatizes
China
one group of
flu,
people. Yeah. Do you think
batshit
when
insane Chinese
think-
people that had
do you
nothing to
think-
do with
do you-
racism?
Hold on. Do you think that when he does that he's doing it specifically because the racial supremacy is part of the goal, or do you think that he's cynically doing that because it misdirects people away from his own like incompetent behavior on managing the matter, or do you think it's a combination of both?
I think it could be a combination of both, but I'm not going to go out and assume that it's inherently quote unquote racial, because China itself is not a race. China there are multiple ethnicities in China besides.
Well, of course, but
Most
I
people
think
don't know that.
Like, for instance, I do think it's tactless that he's calling it the China flu instead of the coronavirus, COVID-19.
Yeah, he wants racism to spread. The racial
thing
divide has been the worst since it's been since the 50s, and it's what helped him win the election.
But calling it the Wuhan, but on a basic level, just like on a blatant level, just calling it the Wuhan flu or coronavirus or Wuhan flu or China flu is not itself inherently racist. It's no
And you
different.
don't understand racism.
Well,
No,
there's
it's
no
no
such thing as
different than
inherent.
saying, like, the
In
Spanish
terms of
flu
inherent, I
or
mean, words
Lyme
themselves
disease.
don't inherently do anything, but it's when they're placed within a particular context.
Oh yeah.
A particular political context, there's no way that he can say that it doesn't end up having some kind of racial connotations.
Yeah, for instance,
Even
when
if someone would say, okay, there's many ethnic groups in China, still, in the political context which we're talking about, the kind
They're
of person who
thinking
is
of a
excited,
specific Asian.
yeah, the kind of person who would be who is in Trump's base, who's getting excited by him referring to it in that way, like probably doesn't even care whether there are multiple ethnic groups in China. They just see the war as the other anyway.
What I was about to say was yes. So it itself is not inherently racist. However, Trump is using it as a dog whistle.
Yeah.
So then you agree with me.
To
See,
an
am I
extent.
not good at? Am I not good at this? I said at the beginning of my
I-
introduction, bringing people together and making them talk. There we go.
I
So
think
what I'll,
on this, it's if I just wanted to get on a point from a bit earlier. I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
on this, it's I'm not sure if I would fully blame it on race as much as I would blame it on just people, like, not necessarily this is bad
Wait.
in
Hold
China.
up a minute. Just to clarify, are you a person of color?
No, I'm not, and I'm not making
Oh,
any
so
points
this.
on that
I
fully,
see.
okay? What I am saying
Okay. Sorry.
What I am saying is I think it is more something to do with chosen ignorance. Now, whether that comes from
How would
maybe race is one of the ways they are justifying it. I think the reason why people didn't prepare for the coronavirus and why none of the viruses were warnings were taken seriously is because they didn't want to. They saw the words that scientists have to include in there because they technically don't know the future, which are things like this may be a big threat and this has the possibility of turning into a full-blown pandemic. And they saw those words may and possibility and they instantly thought, so you're telling me there's a chance that it won't happen? And they
yes,
took
the
that.
human beings,
No,
ever wanting to hope that the worst is not actually going to come.
Optimism bias. It's
I
called
tried.
optimism bias. Exactly.
My conspiracy theory is that the United States government wanted a cut on their population as well, so they allowed the virus to come in as well as.
Oh
propaganda
no
that it
No,
is
my conspiracy
no, in
theory
the
is that it
US
was
this
created
killed
by
the
the
this
it was
kills
created by the Chinese Communist Party in a lab for population control against Hong Kong.
It
in
could be
order to
very
fight-
much a bioterrorism device
Well,
planned by multiple governments
me-
working together.
No, let me
I don't
hold
know,
you.
I
Let
think
me
it- I
hold
think
you
it
all
was
up
the
on this.
PRC.
That's those. I should say basically yes. We should be careful not to actually mention conspiracy theories where possible. But
Well, I
there
only
was
call
at
it a
least
conspiracy theory. I only call it a conspiracy theory because people are gonna yell at me and say no. But
We
that's
should
how I
talk about
feel.
the thing
bat-
I was going to
that-
say is that, there was an instance in which someone in the Daily Telegraph in the United Kingdom did actually write something quite similar to where Hara was going at the beginning, which was that there are actually some people in the ruling class in the United Kingdom who appear to have sort of mused about the idea that they would see it as an upside if there were less government dependence as a consequence of COVID-19, which was a very callous and ridiculous thing for them to have said, but someone did write that down.
I will say one thing about the US and the reason I don't think it's true in the US. The Republican Party, the ones who are in power, a lot of the people who vote for them are really old. COVID-19 happens to kill a lot of people who are really old.
Anything.
I have my own theory about
Maybe
the
they're just
optimism
hoping for-
bias. I
Okay,
will
no,
say,
go on.
I will say, with the optimism bias, at least because there were two other flu pandemics after 1918, and those two happened in the 50s and 60s. My personal theory is that because the generation that experienced the 1918 pandemic is basically died off, like you can count on basically one hand the number of people still alive who experienced that pandemic. I'm of the
They don't
belief
remember
that
the fear.
yeah, no one remembers the fear because if you look at how we reacted to the two flu pandemics that happened in the 50s, you still had that entire generation of people still alive, and they would basically tell the young people because they were the ones in charge,
Yeah.
"Hey, guys, we know what's going to happen. Don't
And
just stay
SARS
home."
And SARS, the original, didn't get into the United States to the extent to which it inspired a generational fear there. Whereas, for example, South Korea's aggressive and very robust response is inspired by the fact that SARS hit them very hard the first time, and they vowed to never be hit the same way again.
Yeah, exactly. So I think there's definitely with a lot of the optimism bias, there's
Yeah.
definitely if you don't remember the
It's
fear,
also-
then you're not going to take it as seriously.
There are also
I
some
can agree
confirmation-
with
there are also
that,
some
yeah.
confirmation biases which seem to occur as well, where when people start to not fear something and then they see that it worked out well for someone else, they start to automatically assume it will work out well for them as well, despite the fact that they haven't got the same preparations. So, for example, People's Republic of China, I saw many people online making this very bizarre argument, and this was, American conservatives making this argument that, oh, it's not so bad because citing China's statistics or citing South Korea's statistics. And I'm thinking, well, it actually could be bad for you because you're not doing what they're doing. The reason why the figures were as low as they are in the other places that they're praising is because they did something. Or if someone like cites Vietnam's statistics, which are also quite good as well, and they're like, well, it's not hurting Vietnam very much. Well, the reason it's not hurting Vietnam very much is because they have mobile, what are those things called? Mobile decontamination chambers. I mean, Vietnam has mobile decontamination chambers, a song for washing your hands, and a total border shutdown in which anyone who tries to enter the country has to go into quarantine for 14 days before they can actually get into the country, where they're kept inside a sealed facility and not allowed to leave by armed guards. So, I mean, if you want Vietnamese figures, you have to be like Vietnam. You can't just have whatever the heck Donald Trump did and then be like, oh, it's going to turn out just fine. It will not.
Well, that's
right?
why the U.S. is now the main epicenter of the coronavirus, and not
We
China.
want it to be.
No, that's Italy. That's Italy right now. Still.
No, it's
Are
the
you
U.S.
kidding?
now. It's
No,
the
the
U.S. now.
US
We
is,
have
like,
far
way
more
more.
cases.
Is it?
Yeah, it's just that those are undocumented. If you use the statistics, and when we come back from the break, I'll show you this because you can actually model it by looking at how Wuhan's statistics grew, and then realize that everything is on a 14-day lag because the amount of time it takes for a person to be infected, to incubate it, and then to manifest it and be tested and found positive. 14 days usually in total. Also, the United States is not doing enough tests to find out who these people are. So it's highly possible that all of the figures that are coming out of the US right now are massively too low.
The guess is for every one confirmed case, there is roughly 100 unconfirmed cases in the U.S.
Indeed.
of coronavirus.
Indeed. And so this is going to be a disaster of unprecedented proportions if that turns out to be correct. And yeah, well said, Will. So, I mean, if at this point we could go to break, you guys are okay with that, right? 5-minute break, and then we all come back. You all are doing quite well. I can see that obviously there was some tensions, at some points during this conversation. But
I'm always tense.
everyone still seems to be friends. So we'll be back in 5
I'm
minutes.
not friends with anyone.
What about me?
Okay, maybe you, Chris.
We're acquaintances.
So
Yeah, I know you exist.
Yeah, so I'll go to break. Right, so we are back from the break. McClure and Hara had to go because of the time that we've been here. We've gone quite a bit over the time. So what we'll try to do is, because we've got way more topics than we actually have time for, we will see if we can touch on just one more topic, and then we'll have a part 2 tomorrow where we'll go over what the rest of it would have been. So, we're just going to keep going forward on these, and we might end up with like multiple streams that are like this. So where are we right now? Right, yeah, everything looks like it's working correctly. So we'll go to the next topic, which is clearly displayed and says basically what is the herd immunity concept. And so we're going to talk about this herd immunity concept, and then we'll see whether the remaining people on the panel agree with me as to how this business works and how it doesn't work. So herd immunity seems to be the idea that if you get sick with horrifying diseases, you get immunological memory, so that next time you encounter the disease, you're less likely to get sick. It's like vaccination, but without the upside of not having to get the sickness. Herd immunity is supposed to be this concept where if enough people have immunity, it will cause a virus to burn out the next time it comes, rather than once again running through the population. Now the question is this a good strategy? And I'm going to go with no, it isn't. And the reason I'm going to say no, it isn't is because the WHO has been putting out a very clear message which seems to contradict the herd immunity strategy, which the United Kingdom and the United States have been committing themselves to. So the WHO's position is that you need to act fast and limit the spread of the virus. And so 3 points, which are prepare and inform, detect and isolate, and reduce the transmission. So South Korea, for example, has been pretty great on this. They had a rapid rise in case numbers because at the beginning, South Korea was all about just doing the testing, getting the tests out there, making sure that everyone takes tests, finding out where the clusters are. So this was coordinated from the top down in a kind of army style. And by being able to see the enemy, they were able to keep people aware of the situation. They were able to isolate clusters and reduce the transmission overall by using social distancing, and even while isolating specific clusters before they got out of hand. So you saw not just the social distancing by itself. Once they found the beginning of what appeared to be a cluster, they would have authorities investigate that, find out who those people spoke to, find out who they're related to, who they know, what the path of their travels were during the time that they were infected before they began to show symptoms. Because as we know, the coronavirus can actually jump from person to person even before people begin to manifest symptoms. So they would trace the thing right back up to the beginning and try to find out what exactly went on. Right? And this is what's possible when you try to test everyone that you can, and when you have increased hospital capacity for just such an emergency situation. So there were plenty of countries in Western Europe, and of course the United States itself, which by contrast did not test people with mild illness, even though those with mild illness or those who are asymptomatic are those who spread the virus the most. And so, I mean, this is obviously extremely problematic. I assume that everyone on the panel who remains agrees with me that herd immunity doesn't make any sense if you don't have a vaccine.
I mean, for the 18th century, it would make sense because that's how they did vaccinate themselves. But this is the 21st
also,
century.
they didn't have a very good understanding of medicine in the 17th
They used
century.
leeches. They used leeches
Yeah.
in the 17th century. And
Also, here's the other thing. Herd immunity
Put on these
kind
leeches,
of
your humors are out of balance.
herd immunity kind of relies on that second word there. Immunity. People need to already be immune in order for herd immunity to actually work. And for people to be immune, they either need to be vaccinated or they need to have gotten sick. And we're trying to avoid the whole getting sick part.
Exactly. The getting sick part is extremely inconvenient to the economy and to like the mental well-being of your entire population.
Yeah.
Honestly, the word, like in terms of the mental well-being aspect, honestly, I am only mentally well when I'm able to work, because work keeps me occupied. Work gives me something to do. And when I'm not working, I usually gravitate towards destructive behaviors.
Oh, dear.
I understand that, Jacob. I understand that because I typically fall into very similar patterns.
And I'm not talking about drugs. I'm not
been-
even talking about drugs and stuff. I'm talking about like prank calling the government.
No, I know that type. it can be hard to avoid that type of stuff in modern times, especially if you have something like I do, like ADHD, or if you fall into those patterns naturally, or people who have substance abuse issues. The thing is I think what you need to do is just try and keep yourself busy, even if it isn't in a productive way. Is there a video game you want to play that you've had for a while and haven't played? Maybe you should play that now.
I haven't beat the Outer Worlds yet.
Exactly. So maybe beat the Outer Worlds. Or like one of the things I'm doing is I dug out some of my old nerdy things. I have these Warhammer 40K figurines for an army that I never painted, and now I'm
Which
just
army?
painting them. Eldar.
Oh.
I know, I'm filthy space elves.
Damn space white supremacists. That kind of is the Eldar, let's be honest.
I was
Okay,
always,
yeah,
I was always
but,
Imperial Guard. Imperial
Hey,
Guard.
the
Yeah,
Imperial
Guard gang.
hey, at least the Eldar just like okay, maybe not the Dark Eldar, but the normal Eldar are fine. The Imperium of Man are the ones that, kind of have the motto of purge the Xeno.
And they kind of try to purge us too.
Oh, if Hara were
There
still
were some
here,
people.
she'd
There
go
were some
off
people
on
who
you.
were really going in on this on the video games and Netflix side of this thing, where I think it was someone from the NHS actually who had said that the previous generations, such as Silent Generation and Forward, I guess, were asked to engage in all kinds of like crazy things in the generational struggles of their time, such as going to wars they didn't consent to go to, battling in Korea, battling in Vietnam, etc., etc. All that's being asked presently of Zoomers is like literally just like watch Netflix for 3 months.
Honestly, I could not do that though,
And-
because
and
the thing
people
is,
are
I
just
need to be
refusing to
doing
do
something
it.
productive. The thing is, like, I mean, I think it's kind of sad. Like, I mean, why not like work on honing a skill or a gift or something? Like, for instance, I'm going to be spending like the moment I get sent home and laid off, or not laid off, but the moment that my place of work closes, I'm gonna get hard working on the book that I've been writing. And I'm going to be locked in my basement. I'm going to be locked in my basement all day working on the history book that I started back in August.
Well,
And that's great, dude.
I mean, that can work as well. That's not a bad thing either.
I've also been like, I designed a tattoo for my cousin, and I'm trying to do art more now, which, like, if you don't mind, like, shameless plug, at Whitman Draws on Instagram is where I put all my art. But yeah, I've been doing a lot of that and just doing a lot of other types of stuff just to keep me busy.
I see
If
in
you
the chat.
stay-
I see in the chat. Jeremiah Talks is giving obviously a more comprehensive and non sort of joke worthy take on this. He's saying, "quote or maybe take this time to clean and organize your home, build neighborhood security circles, go to the range, encrypt your communications, learn to cook healthy food cheaply, read a ton of information." So I mean, obviously that's a serious response as opposed to my sort of more
Jordan Peterson? Is that Jordan Peterson?
And also, yeah, the clean your room thing definitely sounds like a sort of a throw out to Peter.
Clean your
but,
clean your room.
Clean your room,
but,
bucko.
Clean and organize your home is obviously a good thing overall.
Oh
I mean,
yeah,
there's
keep
obviously
your space good. Make sure
Yeah.
your space
Take
is nice.
pride
There's
in your
something to be
place where
said.
you live. Don't live in your filth.
Exactly. And there is something to be said about the feng shui aspect of making sure that everything is arranged pretty well. Because I mean, you're going to be stuck in your house for like months now. So if you're going to be stuck in a house for months, make it so that the feng shui is working correctly.
Oh yeah, my sister rearranged all the furniture in her room.
Oh, yeah.
I'm actually going to be reading and annotating the entirety of the Wealth of Nations. Maybe within the next few weeks.
I was thinking of doing the same thing. I have my copy right here with me, next to me right now.
Same.
We should compare notes. Do a stream.
And
on
people think I'm a nerd.
Hey, for Spurgonomics, you can have me on Spurgonomics, and we can compare notes.
Oh yeah, of course. I think Bitch and I would love to have you on.
Okay. One other thing we'll do is Bloomberg has out a virus update thing. So we're just going to go through that virus update if you guys are okay with that.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no
Okay.
problem.
So I'll put that on screen share now so you guys can read what I'm reading. Because there are some people who do these live streams and they don't actually put on screen what they're reading, so everyone else has to kind of sit there and just listen to that person's voice. Definitely a bad idea. You should always display things on screen if it's possible to do so, because then you don't have to deal with, well, you don't have to deal with the sort of the, people remember things if they're listening to it and reading it at the same time. So anyway, we'll do that now. Screen share. I need to make this into a one-click thing. I've probably said that already during the stream, but I'll come up with a way to do that because I'm having to click 4 times in order to get that done, which shouldn't be so. Okay, so I don't know if that's come up. Yeah, it has now. Okay. Italy shutters output. Global cases top 300,000. Virus update. Okay, so I'm just going to scroll down until we have some individuals wearing their protective suits who look like they're up to serious business right now. Members of Spain's military emergencies unit prepared to undertake a deep clean operation at the border inspection point at the port of Barcelona on March the 20th. Serious business. Okay, Italy is shutting almost all industrial output after reporting the most coronavirus deaths in a day. The US closed in on a deal for an aid package to boost the virus-battered economy by $2 trillion. The number of cases topped 300,000 globally. Infections surged in countries including UK and France. Spain's leader said the outbreak will worsen this week. UK pubs closed, and New York will shut non-essential businesses on Sunday. China's Hubei province, which was the epicenter of the outbreak, had no new cases for a 4th day. Australia deployed an additional 66 billion Australian dollars in stimulus. Key developments. Worldwide cases exceed 304,000, almost 13,000 dead. Italy deaths jumped 19% to 4,825. Cases rise to 53,578. France fatalities rise to 562. UK deaths increased to 233. United States Vice President Mike Pence tested negative for COVID-19.
Damn it.
Italy, Italy rocked. The thing is, I don't understand how he tested negative, given he's been in such close proximity to so many people who have had it. But I mean, I guess some people just get lucky.
Didn't Ted
He
Cruz have it?
shocked it.
I heard Ted Cruz had it.
I have no idea on that one. I mean, someone would have to check. Italy rocked by deadliest day as virus prompts industry shutdown. COVID-19 is becoming the disease that divides American society. So, one thing I'll ask, in American news, are they pronouncing it as COVID-19 or COVID-19?
COVID-19.
Okay. In the United Kingdom, for some reason, it's being called COVID-19, and so I'm alternating between the two of them constantly now, and I need to actually decide which one I'm going to go with. Maybe I'll end up going with the American one, because that's the way I was pronouncing it at the beginning.
Okay. Yeah, it doesn't matter. I mean, I won't fault you either way because I know
I think
you're-
America's
I know you're
best in this
from the
case.
UK, so.
Just kidding. But
America's
no, I don't
best
like
in every
UK.
case. Woohoo.
I'm just not
Are
saying
you gonna speak the Queen's English or the Trump's English?
Yeah, it's a tough choice.
The Queen's English or the Donald's English?
Yes, the Donald's English.
I'll speak
Please
standard
don't
Filipino
remind me.
English.
Okay,
I love how
still.
Bloomberg is actually having like the comprehensive coverage of the virus. Click virus on the terminal for news and data on the coronavirus. So obviously we're not going to do that at this point, but we go down. South Korea reports 98 new cases, and that's 9:09 a.m. HK. So South Korea reported 98 new virus cases, bringing the total up to 8,897. And the number of deaths rose by 2 to 104. Australia unleashed 66 billion, as it said. They deployed 66 billion, including cash payments, as much as 100,000 Australian dollars to small businesses in a second package aimed at averting recession and saving jobs. And Hubei had no new cases, so this is their update. Hubei province, which was the epicenter of the outbreak. Maybe I should increase the font size because maybe people can't even see it. Probably be helpful. There you go. China's Hubei province, which was the epicenter of the outbreak, had no new virus cases for a 4th day, according to the statement. Venezuela had to close gas stations. I was surprised that I am surprised that they're even selling anything. So Venezuela's government is shutting fuel stations nationwide to ration dwindling gasoline inventories as a quarantine designed to stop the coronavirus paralyzes the country. This is one of those things where, like, if you have like a bad economy and then you're coming into the coronavirus as well, your ability to manage this problem becomes so much more difficult. But anyway, we go on. Just a few dozen of Petroles de Venezuela. Am I pronouncing that correctly? Am I even reading that correctly? Petróleos de Venezuela SA's 1,800 gas stations across the country will remain open and operated by the nation's armed forces to allow medical, food, and utilities transportation to fill up. Okay, plan is still private, so they don't want to be named. Italia shuts non-essential businesses. So Italy had a record of 793 new deaths, rising the total to 4,825, as we said before. In Lombardy, where Italy is hardest hit, authorities clamped down further, even going so far as to ban jogging. Washington State cases surge. Washington State reported 269 new cases of the disease, bringing the total case count to 1,793. So far, 94 people have died, the most for any U.S. state. It's an increase of 11 since Friday, the State Department of Health said on its website. The majority of the cases and deaths are in King County, which includes Seattle and its suburbs, where early nursing home deaths gripped the nation. Yeah, because people went visiting their parents or something, didn't they?
Yeah.
Which then resulted obviously in nursing home destruction. The state has imposed the restrictions that have upended daily life, but Governor Jay Inslee has stopped short of issuing a mandate for people to stay at home, saying residents should only go out when necessary. Spain cases to mount, Prime Minister says. Spain's outbreak, already among the harshest in the world, will continue to expand, with more cases and deaths in the next few days, Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez said. Quote, "We have to remain strong until the end of next week," Sanchez said in a speech. Most Spaniards have never had to face something as harsh as this, he said, while also commending Spaniards who are obeying a lockdown imposed under a week-long state of emergency. Sao Paulo state begins quarantine. Brazil's biggest state is entering a 15-day quarantine, with all non-essential stores closing as coronavirus cases rise in Latin America's largest nation. Okay, so, I mean, people can clearly read that. They're at 1,128 confirmed cases, up from 904, and their death toll has risen to 18 from 11. Kuwait has a partial curfew, apparently. Kuwait imposed a partial curfew to contain the spread of the virus, state news agency Kuna reported. The nationwide ban will run from 5 p.m. to 4 a.m., the agency said. The government also extended for 2 weeks a public holiday was to end on March the 26th. Anti-malaria drug has scant evidence. President Donald Trump again promoted an anti-malaria drug to treat patients with coronavirus, although scientific evidence is lacking to back its use in large numbers. Trump retweeted an online post about a small scientific study circulating on Twitter for several days, a decades-old anti-malarial drug called hydroxychloroquine. The tweet said, "Eradicated the new coronavirus from patients' bodies when combined with a popular antibiotic." But solid proof that hydroxychloroquine works is lacking. While hydroxychloroquine and its cousin chloroquine have shown some early promise, neither has the scientific evidence to back their use in large numbers of patients, say experts. Bedside COVID-19 tests get okayed. A COVID-19 test that could deliver results in less than an hour has been approved under U.S. emergency authorization, marking the first test that clinicians can use at the bedside. So there's that. Sure everyone can read that because I'm just scrolling down it. I don't want to be taking too long. Illinois seeks retired doctors and nurses, so they're bringing people out of retirement, obviously, in order to try to increase the number of staff. However, these kind of people would, of course, be very susceptible to the virus, given their age, I would assume.
Yeah.
Deaths surging across Europe. So two of Europe's biggest countries reported surges in deaths and infections. Spain, of course. And then Trump says deal near on aid.
I think we're getting very close to a bill.
Yeah. So they're all
It's going to
negotiating.
be tremendous.
And everyone's
High
working
IQ.
hard. Someone's going to need to examine that legislation to make sure there's no shenanigans going on, obviously.
Didn't they try to hide anti-abortion stuff in it or something? I heard something about that.
all kinds of stuff was going on, yes. Pence said he and his wife will be tested for COVID-19. Okay, but that actually already happened. So as I continue to scroll down, we're just going backwards in time here, right? Yeah, we're just going backwards in time. So I can actually stop at that point. Because we're going back to the point where Pence hasn't even taken the test yet, whereas obviously the latest update is that he had taken the test.
Do you know what I thought was really interesting, though? I just wanted to say something, that the order in which this happened. So the person to say, or the first person in terms of the stimulus, or should we maybe wait and talk about the stimulus till tomorrow? Would that maybe be better?
Yeah, I mean, we can cover the stimulus for tomorrow, absolutely. But I mean, you can still mention it now.
I was just saying, I find it interesting that so this is how it's playing out. So it is Mitt Romney to first suggest that everyone should get a stimulus check. Then after that, you get Tom Cotton and and Mike Lee who come out and say, okay, we'll get behind this. And then Bernie Sanders is like, oh, yes, yeah, I want that too. It should be double, but I'm behind this 100%. And then Donald Trump comes out and says, okay, yes, every American needs to get this. We need to give everyone a check to make sure everybody does fine and nobody gets hurt by this. Then you have Ilhan Omar and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez come out and say Trump is demonstrating the kind of leadership that this country needs right now. And then you have Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi come out and say, no, that's socialism.
Yeah, it was a very weird response by them. I mean, the way that they should have actually attacked this was that when they made their proposals, the pushback by Republicans that would involve like making the numbers be such that it's anti-progressive and it tapers up, where somehow the more money you make, the more fiscal output goes toward you from the U.S. government, whereas the less you make, the less you get. They should have criticized it on that basis instead of suddenly deciding to call the Republicans hypocrites.
Yeah, exactly. Plus, I do think, I mean, either way, their plan is even worse than the Republicans, though. Because all they want to do is, oh God, what was it? Jimmy Dore had a really good video on this that came out earlier today. But basically, the gist of it was, right now, it is taking a sexist, racist, xenophobe to out-progressive the progressives.
Well,
Also, Ray, I think you're gonna enjoy what I send to you in PMs in Discord.
okay, yeah.
To
I'll
be
take a
fair,
look
it
at
also depends which Democrats, because calling all Democrats progressives is a wee bit of a stretch there,
definitely.
Waddy.
Yeah, I mean,
No, but Ray, I'll send you the video when we're done with this here, so you can take a look.
Yeah, it's one of those things where don't forget conservative Democrats exist.
Yeah, that's basically what Biden is.
Well,
Biden's more of a
Yeah,
centrist,
maybe.
actually. The
the
conservative
centrist
Democrats
conservative
are the
Democrats would be like all the way on the other side of that.
yeah,
people
those are
like-
the blue
Maybe
dog
like Joe
coalition.
Joe Manchin
maybe?
is not what I'm referring to when I say conservative Democrats. I mean obviously something to the left of whatever the heck he's doing.
So basically, the blue dog Democrats then.
Well, Joe
Yes,
Manchin
blue
is a
dogs
blue dog.
would count as that. Well, okay, let me put it this way: there's blue dog Democrats, and then there's like Joe Manchin, because Joe Manchin literally votes in line with Republicans on crucial issues. Like, I mean, getting him to do like basic stuff is a
Okay,
struggle.
Hillary Clinton then. She's center right.
Well, I mean, it really depends on how you look at it, because don't forget, during the time when there was the primary and it was Hillary Clinton versus Barack Obama, Obama ran to the right of Clinton.
Did he really? No, Obama ran
did.
as Obama ran. No, this is Obama. I thought Obama ran a pretty left-wing campaign though.
I mean, okay, on the way that he presented himself on social issues, sure, but when it came down to the economics, Hillary Clinton proposed a healthcare plan that Obama ran to the right of, because he said that he claimed that Hillary Clinton is going to mandate to you that you must sign into her healthcare program to get 100% coverage, whereas Obama was like, he will not mandate that, and then
But he did that anyway.
Yeah, he later did it himself
because
anyway. But I mean,
is,
I'm saying that at the time he ran to the right of Hillary, and no one called him a conservative Democrat.
A lot of people forgot that, or seem to forget, especially the Republicans, that Obamacare was created by the Heritage Foundation in the late '80s, and it was approved by Ronald Reagan.
Some people have narrated that story as it having been even earlier than that. That people had been talking about this during the presidency of Nixon.
It's just kind of funny that Reagan
In the
today,
1960s, they proposed universal basic income, and it came very close to passing. And the reason it didn't pass is a group of politicians wanted them to make it so they would give more money to people.
Like, the thing is, Reagan today would probably be a Democrat.
Yeah, probably.
Wait, so which group of people was it that caused that, and under which presidency was that being considered?
JFK.
The UBI, I mean.
Oh, the UBI. Was it JFK?
Yeah, it was JFK.
I thought it was later in the 60s than JFK.
No, it was JFK. It was 100%. It was JFK. Kyle
You
Kalinske.
sure it wasn't Lyndon B. Johnson?
No, I do not. I mean, Lyndon B. Johnson. I wouldn't be surprised if it continued there, but honestly, I know I'm going off topic here. Lyndon B. Johnson is probably my least favorite president of all time. I fucking hate Johnson.
Oh
Well,
my God.
fun fact about
we should debate
Johnson,
that one day.
The
I can't decide
reason
between
why
Johnson or
Johnson
Wilson.
is a nickname. The reason why Johnson is a nickname for penis is because apparently one
dick.
of Lyndon B. Johnson's favorite activities, because apparently he had a massive dick, was to just whip it out and show people it.
Why do you
Wow.
remember this?
That's
I have
that's-
no fucking
Are
clue.
you sure it wasn't? Are you sure that's not Gary Johnson, guys?
Yeah, that sounds like a Gary Johnson move.
Nah, not with
Okay,
how
okay.
he acts.
Anyway, guys, we're not gonna continue to pursue that path because otherwise we're gonna get people coming at us like asking why we're so fixated on this topic.
I don't want to get you. We don't want to get you demonetized. So
Although I am of the boat that Wilson was worse.
he was pretty
Yeah.
bad. Wilson was literally a white supremacist. Like people say that Trump is a white supremacist. He might be. I'm not convinced that. I know Trump's a racist, but I'm not convinced he's a white supremacist. But Woodrow Wilson 100% was a white supremacist. Even
Well,
historians.
yeah, he
even-
showed
even-
Birth of a Nation in the White House.
Even historians agree unanimously that is the closest the United States has ever come to fascism under Wilson.
I wouldn't say it's the closest we ever come to fascism, but I would say he was definitely racist as fuck.
No, in
No,
terms
it
of
is the closest we've ever come under fascism because he
not even the
nationalized
racial-
a lot
no.
of industries during
not
World
even the
War I.
racialist part, because technically fascism doesn't technically have to have a racialist element. Just his policies alone, even if he weren't a racist, his policies were still fascist.
Well, yeah,
Like,
like look at what he did with the
Like,
USRA.
for instance, Mussolini wasn't a white supremacist, but he was he was a fascist.
Yeah, but I don't know. I mean, I don't see Wilson's policies that different from FDR's. So, I mean,
Anyway, back to the
Exactly.
coronavirus.
Yes,
FDR
we
was pretty
can't go. We
fascist
can't
too, though.
go through. We can't even begin to sort of break the ground on like how
should
many
do
weird
that.
things U.S. presidents have been
We should
getting
do-
up to.
We should do
Because
a
it's a
president-
Yeah,
lot.
exactly.
It would be a,
Ray-
it would be a lot. And of course we're being we're obviously being pointed out in the chat that if Lyndon B. Johnson did do those things that Will has alleged that he has done, those would of course obviously be extremely bad. So
Yeah, no, Ray,
Yeah.
you should do a president tier list episode one time. Just
Yeah,
like a
yeah,
long
that could
form.
happen at some
Just like
point.
a
Yeah.
long form 4-hour episode where we all list our presidents.
Coolidge
Yeah.
S tier, everyone else F tier. The end.
Wow, someone's really standing Calvin Coolidge there.
No,
Hell
Cleveland.
yeah.
Cleveland was better than Coolidge. I'm sorry. I'm a Cleveland guy.
Okay, fine. Cleveland and Coolidge are S tier, everyone else is.
Okay.
Okay,
continuing.
okay, guys. Okay. So, was there anything else you guys wanted to add on these subjects, or are you guys like totally okay with resuming this tomorrow then? Because we're literally on the hour now.
I'm fine with continuing it tomorrow.
I'm
I'm
fine
Okay.
fine with continuing tomorrow.
So, what I'll do is I'll start like the outro music, and then we'll kind of like talk about ending a stream, I guess, and then we'll basically transition out of the stream, and we'll be back again tomorrow at around the same time. So give me a second. Let's actually do this. And I've been actually quite pleased as to how smoothly things have actually been going. Like honestly, things have actually been going quite smoothly. Once I figured out where the key mistakes in the stream setup were, I was able to make it so now it's a less stressful operation, like in full. So I think I've actually got it worked out now. Things do what they're supposed to do. I just press the button and they work. So it all came down to like literally just one driver that was actually malfunctioning. It's a 3-system setup, you see. And so in order to find out where the problem was, it took a lot of trial and error and essentially log and data gathering. And I found it was pretty much one driver that was actually it had some kind of, I don't know what it was it a buffer overrun? Something. But it was causing, a large cascading set of problems. And as soon as I sort of replaced that problem, we now have a case where we've run a stream and it didn't actually crash on us. So that's very good. So once you've got something that's rock solid and it works, you just don't mess with it again, and it will continue to work.
Nice.
Nice.
So yeah, and so obviously anyone out there who's listening, who are in the chat and so on, if you want to come onto the stream, obviously send me a direct message, and I will always look into your requests and see if we can get you onto the show as well, because we always like having guests on, and there are plenty of people out there in social media who probably will have lots of things that they want to say, and you know, we've got a good platform here. We're trying to build the platform up, and you can always ask to come on if you want to. And I see Jeremiah in the chat has been putting quite a lot of things into the chat. Some of them very useful, I think. So you know, if Jeremiah ever wants to come on, feel free to ask me. I'll invite you on. Right. So we'll see you all tomorrow around the same time.
All right.
Bye-bye, guys.
Thank you.